Hi everybody, welcome to the sixth lesson for Business Management 3-4. This is the first video which covers Unit 3, Area Study 3, which is primarily on operations management. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the relationship between business objectives and operations management, the differences between service and manufacturing-based businesses, and also technological and materials management. So to start off with, this is just a bit of an overview on what operations management really is. So operations management is all the activities that are undertaken by the manager to transform all the resources and materials into your finished goods and services, which are then sold to the customers. Operations management is really, really important for competitiveness because the operations manager can create a unique point of difference in the types of materials that are used, the quality of the materials used, which then helps the business to gain market share from the quality or the services of that overall product. Also, operations management is really important for price and profit margins because the operations manager can source cheaper inputs to increase the business's profit margin by reducing expenses and then competing on the point of price. Before we get into it, there are two really important things which you're going to want to be linking to throughout the rest of the area study, and they are efficiency and effectiveness. So efficiency is the best use of resources, essentially productivity, using your time more effectively by reducing the amount of time taken to create the same or more amount of output. So anything in relation to time, you're going to want to link to efficiency. Effectiveness is the extent to which business objectives are met, primarily business objectives of profit and market share. So anything that's about reducing expenses, reducing costs, improving quality, improving competitiveness is going to be about effectiveness. So when we go through the technological and materials management strategies, instead of looking at strengths and weaknesses, we're going to talk about the ability to improve efficiency and effectiveness and the inability of each strategy to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. So to start off with, similar to in the secondary study, we're going to be linking operations to business objectives. So to start off with, a business can achieve the business objective of fulfilling social needs by implementing corporate social responsibility into their operations. This will come up more in the second video of this area study, but some ways the business could do that is by using solar panels to power the processes or sourcing inputs from suppliers that use strict code of conduct and don't use child labour. In relation to achieving the business objective of profit, the business can utilise technology and automation, which improves productivity. Because products can be made quicker, it reduces the expenses and therefore increases profit margins. In relation to market share, operations management can improve the quality of inputs and processes, either through quality management or through sourcing high quality inputs. By having those high quality inputs and processes, the output of the product is going to be of a high quality as well, which provides the business with a competitive advantage, which should improve market share. And in regards to shareholder expectations, remember this is very, very similar to increasing profit. So as productivity is improved through technology, sourcing cheaper inputs, all those kinds of things, it reduces expenses, which increases profit and therefore increases the shareholders' dividends. Before we get into it, this is a very, very introductory kind of dot point. We need to know the differences between inputs, processes, and outputs. So inputs are the first thing that are used in operations management. They're all your materials and inputs and raw materials. Resources such as knowledge, time, labor, electricity, machinery, all the different things that you need to make your final goods and services. Next is your processes, which transform your inputs, your materials into your final output. This is usually through things like machinery, also through employees, but they're the main two. And finally, you have your outputs, which is the end result of the business's efforts, And these are the final goods and services which are then sold to the community. So to start off with, we're going to be looking at the key elements of McDonald's to try and give you a better idea of the differences between inputs, processes, and outputs. So for McDonald's, which is essentially a manufacturing-based business, they make a tangible product of food. Their inputs are going to be things like the actual shop, so rent or paying for the premises. Another input is going to be labor. Another input is going to be their food, all the bread, meat, cheese or chips, all those kinds of things. The inputs then are going to be the things that transform all of the inputs into the outputs. So things like the grills, the deep fryers, also the employees cooking the burgers and that kind of thing. And finally, the output is all the food that is sold to customers, burgers, chips, milkshakes, whatever. It's a bit different for service-based businesses because it's a bit harder to distinguish between the processes and outputs for a service-based business because there's nothing that you physically see. So for example, with tutoring, the input is me, the tutor, my knowledge, my computer, all the things that help me to provide tutoring services. The process is me speaking the information to you, me providing business management lessons, you watching the videos, that kind of thing. And the output is the student receiving the business management tutoring session and receiving the knowledge. So it's a bit trickier for service-based businesses, so definitely keep that tutoring example in your notes. Now we're going to go through the differences between services and manufacturing-based businesses. It's good to distinguish like things. So going across the table. So when one is tangible, the other is intangible. Makes a lot more sense to distinguish like characteristics of the two, rather than saying that a good is tangible, but a service is performed through lots of labor. Try to stick to things on the same side of on the same level of the table. So to start off with, a goods business creates a tangible product which can be seen and touched, like a burger. A service-based businesses do not create tangible products. They're intangible, they cannot be seen, and they cannot be measured. So that's things like tutoring services, me providing tutoring lessons. That can't be stored, it can't be seen. Also doctors' advice, that kind of thing. Also with goods-based businesses, manufacturing-based businesses, production and consumption occur separately. So someone makes the burger and then 10 minutes later you buy it. Or someone makes your laptop overseas, 6 months later you buy it. So you don't actually know who creates the products that you're purchasing. Whereas for service-based businesses like tutoring, production and consumption occur at the same time. So you are consuming the knowledge as I provide it. Obviously it's a bit different as this is over the computer, but if this was a face-to-face tutoring session, you would obtain that information as I provide it. So it's simultaneous. As we said before, because goods-based businesses create tangible products, they can be stored, whereas services, it's a bit harder to store. Obviously, it's a bit easier with technology, like being able to record on Zoom and that kind of thing. But for the most part, it's a bit more difficult to store. Goods are also mass-produced and are standardized. So, they'll make 1,000 MacBooks that look the exact same. Whereas tutoring, I might provide slightly different information to every student based on what subject they're taking, what level they are at. So services are a lot more customized to the customer's specific needs. Also, as we said before, good-based businesses have very minimal customer contact. A lot of the time, you don't have anything to do with the people who make your computer or make your food at a restaurant. Whereas services, like doctors, lawyers, tutors, you have a lot of contact with the people who are actually providing that service. And similar to that, where goods-based businesses are produced through capital-intensive processes, so through machinery, factories, whereas services are produced through labor-intensive processes, such as me giving advice. Now we're moving on to technological management. So what we want to do is first know the very basic strengths and weaknesses of automation and technology. Once you have memorized and understand those strengths and weaknesses of all technology, you can apply it to the different strategies which we'll go through. They all have the same strengths and weaknesses, and the same ability to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. So technology is essentially when a business replaces humans with technology. So using heavy machinery and factories, that kind of thing, instead of having employees. Now we're going to go through the strengths and weaknesses of technology, which, as I said before, you can apply to every technological management strategy we go through today. So technology is going to increase the speed of production significantly. Instead of having a human who can make 5 computers in 1 minute, the technology can make 1,000 in 1 minute. So that's going to improve efficiency significantly because time is being used better. It also removes humans from dangerous tasks, which can improve the rate of production and improve productivity because their production doesn't need to halt because an employee is being injured. It also is good for effectiveness because it removes the cost of labor. So you no longer have to pay every employee $25 an hour. Another strength is that it's a lot more precise and accurate. It's all controlled by computers. Humans, are inherent to make mistakes. And so that is both efficiency and effectiveness. It saves time because you don't have to remake items that have been made defective, and it saves money because you don't have to pay to replace items that have been made defectively. It also, because it's more accurate, there's less waste, which reduces costs because you don't have to pay to throw out items. You can use all of your inputs effectively rather than having wasted stock that's just thrown out. Another good thing to note is that technology operates at the same rate of production. Humans get tired, they slack off, they get bored, and so the rate of productivity will start to decline. Whereas with technology, the rate of productivity is steady and that improves efficiency. The issues with technology though is that it can be very expensive to purchase, and so that's a weakness to achieve effectiveness. However, I would definitely mention the fact that although the initial cost is expensive, that's likely to be offset by the benefit of reducing labor costs. So in the long term, it's likely to be actually cheaper for the business. Another thing to note is, again, the fact that they need to be maintained, and it is a bit expensive to maintain. But in the long run, it is likely to be more cheap. Another issue is that they can break down or they can be hacked, which will halt production. The business won't be able to produce anything, which reduces efficiency because nothing can be made, the factory can't be of use. And also the issue of corporate social responsibility. If you implement technology, you may have to make a large number of employees redundant. Now we're going to go through each of the technological management strategies you can use. Automation by itself is one you definitely can use. Another one is automated production lines, which is just a bit more refined. So this is for factories which mass produce items. So automated production lines are a series of workstations connected by a computer. Each station performs a special service in the sequence, and the items flow from one station to the next. So it will go from the bottling to the filling, to the labeling, to the packaging, and then it will be sent to the customers. So essentially it just works around on a conveyor belt from one station to the next. The next one is computer-aided design. This is used in the creation and modification of designs. So this is especially used by web designers and creative kind of industries that need, to scale drawings and blueprints, but also in the design process of all goods, because all businesses that are going to be manufacturing need to scale drawings. If the blueprint and modifications for the MacBook are not 100% to scale, that means that the product is going to be defective. So as we've said before, with the strengths of all technology, computer-aided design is going to be a lot more precise, and that improves the efficiency and effectiveness of the final output. And also it allows the person using the computer-aided design to change the modifications and specifications a lot more easily. If it was hand-drawn, then you need to start all over, but you can change things very, very easily as it's all electronic. The next is computer-aided manufacturing. And what computer-aided manufacturing does is it takes the design from computer-aided design and feeds that blueprint and specifications into computers, and the computers create what was in that blueprint into a physical product. So the design of the computer will be put into the machines, and the machines all create the computer to the exact specifications as was outlined in the design. Again, it's a lot more precise and a lot more accurate. And the only real use of humans is just to monitor it and ensure that it is working efficiently and being maintained. And finally, for service-based businesses, especially, this is one to use because other than computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing and automated production lines really aren't going to be used very much for service-based businesses. So if you had in a SAC or an exam a question which asks you to use technological management in relation to a service-based business, you could definitely talk about websites and e-commerce. Websites and e-commerce are obviously a very essential tool for a competitive advantage because it allows a business to gain a global audience and they can attract sales 24 hours a day. Also, they don't have to pay for rent and physical labor, so it's a lot cheaper to operate. As well as it being environmentally friendly, you know, from the lack of pollution and the lack of waste and that kind of thing. Another good thing to mention about websites and e-commerce is that you can track how your customers have found you. You can obtain customer feedback easily and retarget customers through marketing and that kind of thing. So it's a great way to gain and attract sales. Now we're moving on to materials management. So we're finished with technological management. And so materials management is the flow of materials, including the movement and storage of raw materials and finished goods from the point of origin to the point of consumption. So it's all about how to source your inputs and control them up until the point they are provided to customers. It's all about providing the right materials in the right quantities at the right quality and locating and acquiring supplies from high quality and reliable suppliers. So the first thing that we need to know is forecasting. Forecasting is essentially ensuring that the business has the right amount of product on hand to satisfy demand. If they have too much materials on hand and there's not enough demand for it, they then have to sell those items as sale items and they reduce their profit margins. Whereas if they under purchase and they have too much demand, they are missing out on sales and therefore reducing business objectives. So when businesses are forecasting and determining how much demand there's likely to be for their product, there's a few things that they have to consider. The first one is supplier lead-in time. So if you're purchasing products for January, it might take a supplier 3 months to manufacture and ship the products to Australia. So that means you would need to start ordering your product in, say, September, October to ensure that they're on hand for January. Another thing is currency fluctuations. If you are only wanting to spend $10,000, that might change as the Chinese dollar goes up, for example. Another thing is seasonal variations. So if you're manufacturing bathers or swimwear, it's going to be more popular around summertime. So you're going to need to estimate how much demand there's going to be. In order to forecast correctly, there are two things that a business can utilize. The first one is your master production schedule. So your master production schedule is your statement of what the business intends to produce, in what quantities, and by when. And that's when they take into account all the things we spoke about before, like supplier lead-in time and seasonal variation. So an example of MPS would be a business wanting to create 100 blue t-shirts for February. Materials requirement planning schedule then works backwards from the MPS and says, okay, if we want to make 100 blue t-shirts, what materials do we need? How much of each material do we need? And when do they need to be delivered? The final materials management strategy that we need to know is just-in-time. Just-in-time is a really, really important strategy and there's a lot to talk about for it. So I really recommend choosing this one if you have a choice in a SAC and exam. A little bit of introductory information in regards to just-in-time. So just-in-time essentially eliminates the need for storage and warehousing. So what just-in-time is all about is having your inputs delivered in smaller quantities as soon as they are needed for production and having your outputs delivered to customers as soon as they are finished in production. So if you're producing on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have your inputs delivered on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning in smaller quantities for each day of production, rather than bulk buying a month's worth of stock and having it sit in your warehouse and using it as required. Also, with your outputs, as soon as they're finished, they're sent to suppliers and customers rather than sitting in a warehouse and waiting for them to be purchased. Just in time is really, really important for a business as it removes wasted time, because the business no longer needs to search for inputs in warehousing. So the inputs are delivered for them, in the exact quantities that are needed in the morning of production, rather than having to waste an hour finding all the inputs in a warehouse, especially for a big business that might have a million different boxes of different inputs. It also removes wasted time in having to replace items which are lost in warehouse. For a business that has warehouses of millions of different items, it's so easy for things to get lost. And so it's a massive time waster for a business to have to wait for items to be replaced. Similarly, it removes wasted money in having to pay to replace items that have been lost in a warehouse. So that improves effectiveness. It also removes the need to pay for a warehouse. Warehouses are really, really expensive. You need to pay for rent, for huge areas of space, and also a large number of employees to run the warehouse effectively. So it removes those costs to increase the business's profit margin and therefore increase profit. The issues with just-in-time, however, is that it may be more expensive for the business because they can't bulk buy. Bulk buying is usually when a supplier will say, if you buy a large quantity of one supply, we'll give you a discount. Whereas that's not really possible with just-in-time, because if you bulk buy, you need to have it sitting in a warehouse for a period of time. Whereas with just-in-time, you have it delivered in smaller quantities. Another weakness is that if there is any delay in production and those inputs aren't delivered that morning of production, you can't produce that day because you don't have any spare inputs sitting in a warehouse. So if there's any delays, it will halt production completely, which is a massive issue for efficiency because the business can't produce. It's essentially just wasting time. The final issue with just-in-time is that there's no opportunity for the business to check the quality of the inputs before they're used. So if there's any defective inputs, that's likely to affect the quality of the final output, which may mean that the product may need to be replaced as it may be defective. Whereas if a product is delivered and is sitting in a warehouse prior to production, the business can check that it's of a high enough quality for production. So that brings us to the end of this video. In the next video, we'll be finishing off Unit 3, Area Study 3, and I hope this video was helpful.